welcome to episode 4 of the Hobby Studio podcast. I am Michael, and I am joined by Megan.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about, well, stuff. Tonight, we've got on the show, we've got an interview with Ronnie Renton, who's going to talk about Kings of War Armada.
Awesome.
Which I don't think you've heard that interview yet, have you, Megan?
I haven't, no.
You should. He's very excitable.
Yeah.
And he will enjoy it. And we've got a discount code for Kings, well, Mantic as well. So
awesome.
That will
Fantastic.
be in the show notes, and also Ronnie says it in the thing.
Talking to Andrew about Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yep, Crisis Protocol.
You had a conversation with him.
Fantastic little game there. I've got a copy somewhere that I need to play with. So what have we done in the 2 weeks since the last episode? You've been working on Blood Angels, haven't you, Megan?
I have. I've got a tactical squad. Is that half painters?
Yeah.
I'm a very slow painter. I'm the polar opposite to you painting wise. I paint slowly.
Yeah, I'm quite quick. I've kind of done this month. I did a Night of Shrouds for the Night Haunt for my Age of Sigmar. What else have I done? I've done some more Germans. I finished my German infantry, so for bolt action. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, when we get out of lockdown, I'll be able to go and play that.
Yep.
And some Necrons, bunch of Necrons I did for 40k.
They were very good.
Yeah, I like them.
I like a basis for the Necrons.
I quite like them as
They're
well.
different.
Yeah. It sounds weird. It's just a texture paint and 2 dry brushes and some army painter tufts, but it works. So so that's about it. So what we'll do now is we'll run into the interview with Ronnie.
Yeah.
You gonna listen to that?
Yes, I will. Okay.
Good.
I'll listen to it.
Hi guys, and I'm joined by the fantastic Ronnie Renton today, the head honcho over at Mantic Games, and he's joined me today to talk about their fantastic new ship game, Kings of War Armada, which I think came out just September gone. Was it September?
Yeah, November, I think, by the time we actually shipped it. But yeah, just towards the end of the year last year, our lockdown baby game. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So what we like to do with the guests when we bring them on for the first time is to sort of just ask them a little bit about their background in the hobby. How did they get started, and what they what they're playing or doing now. So I guess we'll ask you to sort of
So well, I'm so old that I started the hobby before there was a hobby. So when I was young, we started with the Airfix toy soldiers. And I used to set those up all over my bedroom and stay up all night and get telling off for my mum for those. And then when I found out about the War Games Club that was being run at school, and I'm about 10 at this time, we were in the last year of the junior school, I walked over there and absolutely loved it. Always been interested in military history. So at 10, so it's 1981 at this point, we were playing Napoleonics, 1/72nd scale. And I loved those. Had a bit of World War II because you've got to go that way. And then I discovered a company called, actually, I think it was Metal Magic first, but there was some military modelling magazine. What's it called? And I had one of those, and there were some adverts for these fancy models that came in. And the first ones I had, they were pretty rubbish actually, but it was like an elf and a dwarf and I guess it was about parallel to D&D, but my interest was always the toy soldiers, not the role-playing game stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've discovered Citadel Miniatures, and the Perrys were bunking out their kind of old classic dwarfs at the time. My first figure was a barbarian, 35p for a little metal model, the single blister pack. With, I think, a blue background with the yellow writing, and that was it. That was me. So that's what I've been doing ever since. I should have grown up by now, but not quite made it.
Oh, growing up is so overrated.
Correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. And obviously, you've gone on to found Mantic Games after a career at other companies.
Yeah.
And you make some pretty nice models.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and have been publishing games pretty solidly for a while now.
About 10 years. So I think we set up. I think I had a great fun time. I worked for GW kind of before it was even GW. Well, I was still Citadel Miniatures, and on and off through my uni, and then went up there 92. Great fun. Still a very small company then, and grew in the next 15 years to quite a big one. And I think some of the fun, and I enjoyed that growth and different challenges, and it was becoming a bit more corporate. So that wasn't my profile. And they had a little go with the licensed game, Lord of the Rings. But for them as a business, actually, better for them to focus on 40K, really. So I thought, well, maybe I could go and get some licenses and make some cool miniature games, which this was quite an innovative idea at the time. Whereas if you flick onto Kickstarter these days, 10 people a day seem to be doing it. But at the time, no one had quite thought that combining licenses with toy soldiers might be a good thing. And GW weren't going to be pursuing that as a strategy for obvious reasons, the stores and everything else. So, we went, and then obviously it takes a bit of time before you get the credibility to talk to licenses. So we also started doing the Kings of War game, and then actually that started getting quite popular in its own right. So suddenly our time was divided between finding new licenses and doing the games that we were building ourselves, which were kind of good fun and more enjoyable, in some ways than working on a license. Certainly more fun than working on a license you didn't like, what I mean? So now if we get a license we love, Walking Dead, we loved it, read the comics, the TV series at its peak at the time. It was absolutely, global phenomenon. And we made, I think, still one of the best skirmish games, modern day skirmish games that's out there. And, if anyone's not tried it, I'd recommend it, because it is an absolute knockout game where it's player versus player with terrain that bites you and eats you and is just as much of a threat as anything else. So, that's good fun. We've done Hellboy as a board game. Again, we love the comics, we've loved the movies, and, we did that. But at the same time, we kind of like making our own games. We kind of like Kings of War. It's doing well. It's growing. There's a great tournament scene. The fans of it love it for the ease of play and you can have a game in 2 hours and still be in the pub for 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Great community, and we're kind of exploring it and wanted to make other games set in there. So when we were looking around, I thought, been a while since anyone's done a good boat game.
Yeah.
Warlords have done a quite good one with Black Seas. We like that. Obviously, they do the historical stuff. And so I said, look, actually, I like what you've done. I think we tarted it up a bit, and I think we improved it, but I won't tell them that, But more importantly, we added a whole load of new fancy races, and that obviously, when they're doing the historical, it's got to be quite accurate. Whereas when we're doing our fancy stuff, we can do whatever the heck we want, as long as it, makes sense and resonates. So, we were able to come in, the scale was set, the very basic core games are set, but then we've taken it on a whole new level. And I think the game that you've got now is a really slick, phenomenal game.
Yeah, so it's as you say, an ocean-based ship game that we haven't seen for quite some time. I think the last big one was, I'm just trying to think, what was the last
Uncharted, Spartan Games is one.
Yeah, yeah, they did that one, yeah.
They did that. Dreadfleet, but I don't think that did everyone. And then, probably Man of War before that, and that was like 30 years ago, something crazy. So
yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and I think people love it when you put a spaceship in it, and it's fantastic, but a normal ship, and we haven't done that for quite a while, so.
Yeah,
but everybody has lots of good.
We looked at the sci-fi, but there's been quite a lot of quite successful playing games. X-Wing did very well in that space. And the Kings of War is a heartland at the moment. Kings of War has a big audience, a growing audience. But more importantly, I think we were really able to sculpt the right kind of figures that people want to play.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's absolutely critical. I had the vision, but more importantly, Matt is absolutely nailing on delivering that vision in terms of quality, sculpts, scale. And each of our armies now have their own feel. They're becoming more and more mantic. On purpose, when we started out, our dwarfs were dwarfs, our elves were elves, our orcs were orcs. But now at each year, the dwarfs got the steel behemoth, which is big motorized bull that kind of chomps along the battlefield. They've got the Brock Riders, so they've got their own feel. They've got their stone golems where they use their magic to interact with the earth. So the dwarf army is now a very mantic thing, and the abyssal dwarfs, and so Armada allowed us to double down on some of the ones that we love, and even more dip into some of the ones that we've been messing around with, like Empire of Dust or the new fleet that's just coming out, and it looks awesome, because we had a carte blanche to have a go at it. No one's ever done, that kind of fleet.
Agreed. Yeah, there wasn't really anything like that in Man of War, which I think a lot of people who are sort of picking this up are like, there's a Man of War type game out there.
And it's a bit like when we did Dreadball. It wasn't like Blood Bowl, but it was. It was a
similar
sports game, miniature game, but it's an hour to play. It's a lot quicker. It's sci-fi, not fantasy. It's not American football. It's just quicker. It's got to line up and set.
I always found it was like hockey myself, but
exactly. That's a good ice hockey even, and with the violence. So it's like, if you like Blood Bowl, you're probably going to like Dreadball. We said it, but it's not. There's not a replacement for it, because they're a different game and there's different audiences. However, you'll probably like it, and you'll probably want to play it, and you'll certainly enjoy painting the teams and everything else. And I think this is one, if you've got fond memories of Armada, then you'd be mad not to look at this, really, because if you like it, it's slicker. The game's design is 30 years on, and how we play games have just got slicker. From test match cricket to one day cricket to 2020, it's faster, it's quicker. The models are surprisingly bigger. When you look at them, you think they're about the same. No, they're not. They're about 3 times the size. But
So what scale is it at roughly?
Oh, I don't know. I've no idea. Same size as Black Seas, whatever that is. 1/200th, maybe a bit bigger than that.
Yeah,
maybe. But the interesting thing is, I remembered, because obviously I was at GW when we launched Man of War. It was one of the first products I sold, and the boats were small because they were in metal, because GW at the time couldn't afford to do plastic. And you couldn't cast them any bigger than that, otherwise they weighed a ton. And as they were already a PLC by then, they wanted their money, and so for margin reasons, they did them as little pieces of plastic. Whereas the resin techs come on so much that we had a kind of latitude that we could do them in resin at a scale that we thought looked very jolly sexy. And so they're not saying that just that bigger. They are bigger, but they sit very nicely on the gaming table. They're a nice size. They're big enough that they feel like your models, and if you paint them well, they look really, really good. But they're not so big that you're painting them for months before you can actually playing. And if I was waiting for the dwarf fleet, but until then I got so excited, I did the Basileans, which is the human fleet. We can talk about each one a bit. Some kind of battle damage. I went raiding the cast-off bin and just picked some, then painted them as if they'd been blown apart, and like at the end of the battle with holes in them and all that. And so I didn't take me all day. I got them done in a weekend, and I enjoyed that. And I've not painted 2 factions for a game for a very, very long time.
And obviously, as you say, they're resin, so that allows you to get a lot more crisp detail in the models, which
the cast is stunning. It's lovely, and the detail on the boats. I'm sure maybe you'll put some pictures up on your social media, and we'll get some across to you. But when you see them, it's fully that skirmish game, where you love your figures and you painted them up nicely. But it's really refreshing not painting another different figure. You're painting a boat. Yep. So it poses a few challenges, but actually as hobbyists, we kind of like that. But they're not insurmountable challenges. How do I paint the sail? Well, how do I paint my standards? How do I want to tweak it from there? But
and being a different scale, it's sort of like slightly different challenges as well, which is
so there's some challenges, but actually, particularly after we've all had a year of lockdown, something a bit different. And I think this is why it's been so successful. People are ready for something just a little bit different. You know what? I made a good dent in my lead under the bed, my plastic mounted. I'm going to have some boats. I fancy doing something a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
yeah, and you said it's based on the Warlord game Black Sails, which, I mean, personally, I think that was actually a really smart move. Two reasonably successful British companies teaming up to launch a new game based on the other company's rule set, and I think that personally was a very smart move, because it means you could have gotten this to market quicker, and at the same time,
we had to write the core rule set. It's as simple as that. When we had it, because COVID was starting to impact. It wasn't something we could do in China. I didn't want to kickstart it. I didn't think it was appropriate to put it down that channel. I think it was far more appropriate for it to come out through our, through our retail partners and direct. So having that starting point and talking to them gave us a core rule set. And actually, Matt, our operations director, is very good at taking a good rule set and I think making it better. And that almost takes as much time as writing the core rule set, because a second edition is always sharper than the first edition. It's always, got a bit more zip and you knock some of the things out. Well, we were able to do that. We were able to take a rule set that was published, printed, look at their, Q&A and their errata, and then with clean eyes, because we hadn't been involved in the development of it, with clean eyes, just get stuck in and go at it.
Yeah,
and then start adding. So once you can clear out some of the wind things, which is also, the wind is super important in the historical, because A, it was, and B, everything has sails. They all have the same guns and they all have the same ships, basically.
Yeah. More or less,
yeah, and then they tweak them. But what I mean is, you've got middle, small frigates, gunboats, you pick them and then you tweak them. And I think their core sprues are the same. You put different flags on them. Obviously, on dwarfs, they have engines. They don't bother with them. Others have magic. So the wind plays less of an effect. And so we could tone certain things down to allow us to have more fun with magic. We have different types of tech. So some have cannons, some have rock lobbers, etc., etc. So I think by coming in halfway through, we could concentrate on the things that would make Armada an even better gaming experience.
Yeah, that makes
without
sense.
having to worry about how do you move, how do you shoot. That's all done. Just pick that up.
Yeah, so you've got the heart of it, and then you've sort of built a body around that.
Yeah, it's when you see a computer game, FIFA 2020, 2021. Here's a new players, here's a new things, but there's an engine underneath that probably from some year to the next, but they're just refining it and making it better. Kind of a reskin, but probably that's not a great example in terms of FIFA, because I think they're more tweaks, whereas this is more of a, here's working engine, let's add the things that really make this character full in fantasy and fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay, and as you say, it's a sort of skirmish game, so you don't need a large fleet to sort of get started with, which is handy.
It's not 200 boats, it's half a dozen. I think the range is lovely. And there's a 2-player set, which gives you the Basileans and the Orcs.
Yeah.
We went down that route because the Basileans, they're our good human faction. Some might say so good that they've become bad on the highway. But, good, honest, straightforward, straight talking Basileans. And it gives you a good stepping in point. There's the Basileans. And then obviously Orcs, classic, nicely different challenge. They want to come up close to you, board you. They're not that great at shooting. They're not that maneuverable. It's just brute force and ignorance. Very characterful, very different looking boats. The more the pirate angle, but boarding you. And in that you get half a dozen boats for each side. And then if you actually add, there's a big boat for each, the Eloe and the Smasher, I think, which is the bigger boat. If you add those to it, you've got exactly what you'd get in the starter fleet. And for all factions, if you don't want the game, or if you've got the game, or if you don't want one of those, you just buy the starter fleet, which is a big boat, a middle boat, and a couple of small boats.
Yeah.
And then you add to your fleet with the booster fleet.
Mhm.
And that gives you, sometimes if you need a second one of your middle or one of your large, you add that. With the dwarf, they don't have any smalls. They have quite a lot of mediums. So they've got a load of different varieties in there. So you add that. With the Basileans, you've got some more sloops, but quite a lot of the middle order ships. So depending on adding character to the fleet, and so it's a nice, easy two box purchase. We'll make the singles available, I think, in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Because people now will have played enough, and they go, "I want one more of those," or "I need a bit more firepower, but I don't want to buy another booster fleet." Or sometimes you buy a booster fleet because it's actually a bit cheaper, but other times you might say, "No, I want just specifically that one boat, and that's my fleet complete." It's great. So we're making that available. 4 armies to start with in this first launch window, which is just ending now. We had the Basileans and the Orcs, dwarfs, classic, heavily armored, heavy firepower, trundle across, hard to beat. And then we did the Empire of Dust, which was the dry undead. So you've got the whole Egyptian feel going on. So you've got them, rowing, triremes, a little bit of kind of Roman feel about them, vibe about them, Roman Egyptian vibe about them, but magical, got great big like magic eyes on the back, zapping laser beams across the fireballs, whatever, across the battlefield. So 4 really different types of armies and fleets. And again, 2 purchases, starter fleet, booster fleet. And you're done. You're well on the way. You will be having good games with that. You might find there's a few tactics you can't tweak. You might need the odd 1 or 2 more boats, but by and large, you're there. I've certainly painted up the dwarf, starter and booster in a weekend, glued them together and got them painted. Very happy with them. And there's plenty for my first half a dozen games before I'm going to need to add anything else.
Yeah.
So not at all intimidating.
So very easy to get started in, and not a terrible cost either. I mean, the booster fleets, I think they're about £30, and the starter fleets are about the same.
Yeah, 30 quid, and you get all the cards in there. So there's no buying of a codex as well or anything like that. You just if someone's got the rule book down the way, you can just add your fleet if the mate's playing with you. You only need 1 set of everything else, so you get all the cards you need. All the minis you need, 2 of those, and you're up and running.
Yeah, and I believe you also got sort of a sort of 5th faction with the Kingdoms of Men.
So this was a hook back into the Warlord boats, and what we said was the Basileans are the big boys. They're the ones that keep the shipping lanes open and slapping around and get uppity. But in the Panithor world, there's lots of human, enclaves and little kingdoms and fiefdoms and empires and what have you, and obviously just huge amounts of trade that go on. And so we kind of said, look, actually, here's a Kingdoms of Men army. So if you've actually painted up your fleet for Black Seas, come on over and give this game a try. And here's a pack of cards that you can just convert them over with. So 1 pack of cards, and you can use the same minis. We may well go and get some ships off Warlord and release them as our own faction, but at the moment we've got plans for extra books and big boats, really XLs for the fleets we've done, and some new fleets as well. So we're kind of focusing on opening up to probably 6 and then 8 fleets to give people lots of variety and choice.
Yeah, so we'll be able to sort of grow that as the player base grows and people want to come in.
Well, yeah, and also if you've played a few tournaments with one faction, you might want to change it up.
Probably want to change it up.
And just adding 1 new faction changes the meta a whole lot. They play better against them, but worse against them, and there's new things that can be tweaked and enjoyed. So yeah, it's good fun to keep adding to it, and that's kind of why we did it too. So
yeah, mixes up the game a bit, because obviously if such and such has a particular tactic, suddenly I've got to defend against that.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got that point where they're while that army, this fleet does very well against those armies, suddenly it doesn't against that one, and I've got to now start turning back. Or it just keeps the challenge going. Same as like releasing new minis and new painting challenges. I think the new gaming challenges keep it fresh as well.
Oh, exactly. There's nothing worse than when a game is stale because every faction that comes out is samey or something like that. And I think one of the things I'm liking about what I'm seeing with Armada is each faction, as you say, has a distinct look, feel, and play style.
Totally. And that's driven partly from the narrative. The elves are very big on the water, but also how is it going to play differently than what we've got? You could see the first 4 armies probably couldn't have been more different. One magic heavy, one middle of the road, middle of the sea, one close combat, one slow, heavy, punchy. Yeah. And then now we're starting to kind of cut again those segments and dissect them. We've got a super quick, fast, nimble fleet coming with elves, twilight kin, and so on. So yeah, fantastic.
So I mean, how would you what would you think would be the best way for someone to sort of, as you say, get started in the game? Would you say the starter set is sort of the better way to get into it, or is it just look for the faction you like?
Well, a bit of both. I mean, the 2 things. So firstly, sometime late April or very early May, just as lockdown kind of probably comes to an end and we can start running tournaments and games, I'm going to be running a Learn to Play with Ronnie Armada. This is because I have a big aversion to reading rule books. I like people to show me how to play. And of course, I saw Armada, it was December 19. Because we looked at the Black Seas one, we played it, and then we were also looking at how we were going to tweak it. But then I hadn't seen it and I hadn't played anything, and because of lockdown, I didn't get a chance to. Normally, I'll play a game 3 or 4 times through its development and see that it's staying true to the vision that we had for it. But that just wasn't possible, both with the time, all the disruption we were coping with, and everything else that was going on just didn't happen. But and then it came out in November when we were right in the beginning, kind of that short lockdown 2 and then lockdown 3 hit.
Yeah.
So my worry is that we've all got these beautiful fleets. We start painting them up. We've got them painted. And you know what we're all like? We all have the attention span of a gnat when we're hobbyists, and someone shows us something new and shite and briny. We all go, ooh, ooh, and they all leave their fleets at home and start playing something else because something else comes out. So I said, right, well, I don't know how to play. I don't know, it'll come back to me, but I want someone. So one of the guys, and so normally what happens is after a game comes out, we all go to the gaming shop and someone's running some demos, or we go to Salute and Mantic's got a stand and we're running demos, and you'd wander over and you'd go on then, Ron, tell me about this game. And I'd get all enthusiastic and there'd be people playing demos, and you'd look and you'd pick them up and you'd have a look at the boats because they're there in front of you, and you go, yeah, I'm taking this home. People would have bought a whole load of boats, and then the guys in London would have taken it to Hate, the club in Hackney. They'd have gone down there, and a couple of them would have decided they were buying it at Salute. They'd have bought it at Salute, they'd take it out. And then on club night, a few people come over and they're like, hey, Bob, what, tell me about this. I remember Man of War. And then they go, oh, yeah. And then Bob would get a couple more people in from the club, and then you'd play for 3 months. And then you get bored and you go on to something else, but you still got the fleet there. And when we do something excited, you bring it back out and go to a tournament or whatever else. And that kind of is like how we live these days. And no one's done the demo. No one's taken it to club night. So the question you're asking is, how do I get into it? I think, well, yeah, that's really important to us because we think it's a beautiful game. And if we don't get a good player base now, in 2 years' time, it's run out of steam. There's nobody quite got it. And it's so come play with Ron. We've got the guy who runs demos. He's really good. And I'm going to turn up. I've not read anything. I've painted my fleets. We're going to set it up. And he's going to run me through a demo. And there'll be a big build up to it. But I'm going to say, like, go buy a fleet or go buy the 2-player set and set it up, and we will all learn together. We'll all have it there, and I'll say, okay, what does this dice do? And someone else will be watching the questions, and we'll ask those questions because it's really important that we kind of learn. But go buy a fleet and join us on that night, or probably better, one of a group of you buy the 2-player set. You've got two fleets in there. I think there's 2 single boats available at the moment. I think it's the Abbess, and like I say, there's one other single boat for the Orcs. If you add those 2 to the 2-player starter set, you've now got exactly what you'd get in this starter fleet for the Orcs and the Basileans.
Mm-hmm.
So you can buy just the 2-player if you like it. Add those 2 boats. If you know you're going to like it, then buy those 2 boats, and you've got basically all the rules, all the dice, all the terrain, all the counters, everything you need to play, and the rule book. And you've got the first 2 fleets in their entirety in their starter set, the starter fleets.
Yeah.
So if you like it, I wouldn't say. Then you can add the booster on. So obviously, when we did a bundle at launch, you could, some crazies were like, "Yes, I've been waiting for this game," and bought everything up. But 2-player set, perfect. It's, I think, 75 quid.
Mm-hmm.
You get 2 fleets, they're 30 quid each, plus everything else that's in there, the cards for those boats as well, and everything.
Yeah, fantastic, and that's obviously ideal at this time because a lot of us are stuck at home with the missus, and this is something I think that's easy to play for 2 people. And from what I've read so far, because I haven't got the rule book myself yet, I've just read the how to play stuff at the minute. It looks like something I wouldn't fear trying to introduce to my missus.
Well, all Magic games are that way, and interestingly, I think when people realised they weren't going to be playing Kings of War or 40k last year, in that lockdown one, when you think, I ain't getting out to my club anytime soon, we actually had an absolute bonanza. We did a bit of a sale, but we did an absolute bonanza on The Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
We put it up for sale. I said, look, yeah, you know why? Because quite a lot of partners have watched that show.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the older kids that might be back at home for lockdown had watched that show. And even if you hadn't, everyone knows what a zombie is, and everyone can see that Michonne's a cool woman with an excellent, choppy sword called katana. Yeah. So a lot of people thought, I'm going to be at home. I can't see if my wife play Kings of War, but I might be able to get her to play Walking Dead. And the models I can paint and build some terrain and have some fun and use my lockdown to have another thing. But actually, and quite quickly, I've been I've been given an absolute thorough beating by my 12-year-old son on a couple of occasions for real. When I start up, I'm like, I'll be soft with him, and 2 turns in, you think, oh, he's going to beat me here. Yeah. And there's nothing I can do about it, because it is that kind of game, player versus player with zombies. And I think that's defining of how Mantic write the games. We want you to be able to just pick them up and play. And within reading the rule book and a watch of a couple of videos, you're moving figures around, you're rolling dice. But then, like Othello, is it Othello? Then you've got to keep learning, and as you get better, your opponent gets better. You can add a couple of characters, you can strengthen out your force. I've played a couple of boat games, and I've just not quite got enough firepower to sink them. Okay, let me add a little gunboat there to support that area.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, and it's as you say, it's a very approachable. I don't want to say beer and pretzels, because I don't know, some people think that's a sort of insult, but
yeah, I think it's very approachable. I think that's a fair way of saying it. I think you'll get a full gaming experience, but the learning curve is not steep. Mm-hmm. It will feel quite natural, and the other thing is, because it's one of those ones where, if you tried to play games of Kings of War on a battlefield with as little terrain as this, it would just be a shooty death match, because there's not a lot of terrain. But the problem is, all of your guns are on the side of your boat, and your enemy is in front of you. So, and your boat doesn't just turn and wiggle. You've got to think a few turns ahead. Yep. And then what are they going to do? Where am I going to get them? Because what you've got to try and do is maneuver yourself for that broadside.
Yes.
Or if you're an orc, you've got to guess where they're going. And you don't just get to turn on a ninepence. One of the big things in the game is the turning arc. Yeah. The small boats have a wider turning arc. The bigger boats have a really slow turning arc. So you can kind of guess where they're going, and there's not much latitude there. So the tactics is about using that open space. And now it seems that whenever I play, I manage to land on an island, no matter what. But yeah, there's everyone gets the concept that the boat is kind of sailing forwards, and you can tweak it. And what's the speed? Okay, so I'm going to be there and there. Now, what do I need to do to get these shots off? Okay, I can see down the side on the card. Those are my dice. How does that work? Oh, okay, I understand that. Right, roll some dice. So you're into playing the game quite quickly. The learning curve for a veteran gamer is very low.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge of getting your boats where you want them with the right guns in the right place without your weaker ones getting shot off the board, so therefore you lose your punching power. So you have to put your bigger ones in between to protect them. Oh, I'm liking this. This is a naval game. There's some tactics here. And that's what we try and do. We don't try and let the rules get in the way of the tactics. We try to make sure the rules support tactical play.
Yeah, so easy to learn, difficult to master.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's our mantra.
Yeah, that's probably the ideal place for a war game to be.
I think so, particularly with fantasy, because you're going to have complexity in each army list. Mm-hmm. There's infinite variety and choice in there, and you can add flavour, and you can add fun, and you can add random, like not random, but wowsy stuff in there. Whereas I think sometimes there's a pressure on historical rules, but because fundamentally it's human versus human, with a technology where both armies have a similar technology, we're both firing flintlocks at each other, or cannons, or swords and shields. There's lovely majesty, or we're both in tanks, or but so sometimes the rules have to give you some kicks inside the rules when you're doing a historical game, in a way that with a fantasy game you want to say, get playing, now start having some fun with your army list picking and fleets, because there's real choice and variety there.
Yeah, because there's nothing more fun than an orc boat charging at another boat to board them.
Yeah,
that does sound brilliant fun.
Out that you tooled your boat up to resist charging, to accept boarding actions, and you've just got your Brocks on there, your Berserkers on there, and you're like, yeah, come on board, mate. What? Shit. And you've sailed your boat out, pretended that you just put it in the wrong place, when all along you couldn't wait for the orcs to board, because then they board. You're going to give them an absolute good toe-to-toe action, while you then go and pick off some of their other boats.
Fantastic. I mean, as I said, definitely sounds like a game that's up my street, and it is on my sort of radar to grab at as soon as I can afford it. So, brilliant. I think that's about all we've got time for. But I think I want to end the conversation by sort of asking, what so far is your favourite model in the whole range, be that gameplay wise or modelling wise? And I think you're going to say modelling wise because, as you say, you haven't really played it.
I'm going to get you a code for your listeners, and they can all get a 20% discount if they
fantastic.
Go on the website. And I'll run for the next few weeks. Let me just, that's not there. Do you want to say it out, or do you want to type it out so people can?
If we can say it out, that's and I'll type it out. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it says Ronnie says. I think it's Ronnie says by Mantic, I think, but
just get my notepad up.
But we'll keep doing that while I have a look at the boats. And but I think it's going to be Ronnie says by Mantic, and it'll give everyone 20% off. It'll all be uppercase. And I have to say the Empire of Dust fleet, which has just come out, incredible. And I'm looking at it here, and the XL boat that's coming has got from the front a kind of massive ramming front of the boat. It's then got a trebuchet with burning purple flames, a couple of altars, 2 crossbows, a pyramid guarded by 2 giant wardens alongside 3 columns. Come alive when we board them. There's cannons all the way down each side, alongside a load of oars that have come out of the base of the ship. So it's got a bit of turning. Another fire-throwing catapult, and then a huge temple at the back with a big monster up on the top.
That sounds incredible.
It really is. So I think that's where you. I think if you're going to have to maybe pick a ship, I think that was probably going to win it, because the detail, the paint job, the whole thing is just breathtaking. And as a fleet, it does look really good.
Ah, wonderful.
Probably the most different. Yeah. So Ronnie says by Mantic, all capital letters, and we'll get that live and up and out.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. Right, that's fantastic. Thank you for joining me, Ronnie, and it's been a pleasure having you on, and hopefully we'll get you on again sometime to talk about another game.
Lovely. Anytime
or this one some more.
Yeah, or all of them, as you can see, I'm quite excited.
All of them, yes. You are very excited.
Hello there, and I am joined by my good friend Andrew, for all the way down in Cornwall, and
Plymouth.
Plymouth. Oh God, is Plymouth in Devon?
It's just on the border.
Oh right, I thought I was going to get in trouble there because I could have sworn you were Cornish, but
I consider myself to be Cornish.
Ah, right, fair enough then.
I just happen to be a bit of an immigrant.
My nieces are Cornish. So, well, two of my nieces, that is. They're down in St Austell.
What's the one?
Sorry?
I said that's the one.
Yep. So anyway, right. So we're here today. We're going to talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol, which is a really cool game in which you get to fight as Marvel characters. I mean, what else can you say about that, really? But I think what we do when we have anyone on for the first time is we like to ask them a bit about your background in gaming. How did you get into it, and what games do you play now? So shoot, Andrew, tell us about yourself.
To quote the great bard, I'd say Hero Quest.
Oh yeah,
that is definitely the start for me. My parents got it for me for Christmas, and unfortunately for them, I stuck with it. I think they thought it would just be a quick, fun thing to do over Christmas, and I kept going to different game shops, finding everything I could. Luckily for them, they didn't have to help me with painting. They had a friend who was into it, so they'd send me off to his house for Saturdays. I would paint and come home, and eventually they gave me a shed. I hoarded in there. Eventually, obviously, going to Games Workshop because that's the thing that everybody knows. Mm-hmm. From there, I dived into D&D, HeroClix, Mage Knight, Infinity. I try, anytime a new game came out, I would try and get into it to find out about it. And to my detriment, I think I wasted quite a bit of money on a few games that crashed and burned.
We've been there.
Yeah.
Any notable examples, or
there was a game called Void.
I remember that. That looked good.
It was a D10 system.
Yeah.
A variation of Warhammer. I think made by some of the people that used to work for Warhammer, Games Workshop, rather.
Yeah, I think it was.
It came out with about 4 factions, some that I really wanted to use to convert over to 40k on the chance that if it did crash and burn, I still could use the models and not have wasted my money. And that kind of worked out for me. I backed Wild West Exodus on Kickstarter. And that stung me for a little bit because when they sold the game to Warcradle, Warcradle, in my mind, changed it quite dramatically. And it wasn't the game that I'd originally invested in. Mm-hmm. So I sold off most of my stuff or converted it across. Mm-hmm. Had a look. They had some really good models. There was a werewolf that was for the Native Americans, and I chopped that up, and it's now a wolfen for my 13th Company Space Wolves.
Nice. Yeah, that did change quite a bit between the in the studio transition. But
yes,
it's a shame. I've not tried the new one, to be honest, but I do keep meaning to give it a try.
Going back to sort of HeroClix, that's again a superhero system. Primarily, I went into it with Marvel because that was the first thing they did, and I became an envoy for them. I managed the southwest of England in terms of tournaments and demos. Mm-hmm. We formed a league across the country where the different envoys organised a whole campaign that would involve everybody, and it was quite successful. But then it changed hands to NECA, and this sort of interim period between Tops and NECA that caused a sort of unrest, because some of the games, they just kind of stopped selling them, and we didn't know what was going on, and the Envoy team sort of just disbanded because there was no one to sort of manage us. And that's kind of when I stepped away from the game, partly because there's this element of blind buying, and you might want your favorite superhero, but you're not necessarily going to get them.
Yeah, I think I remember trying to get hold of a particular Green Lantern, and never getting him. I think it was Guy Gardner I wanted.
Well, I think they're going to be releasing a Guy Gardner in the next set, but I don't think you'll be able to get him because they're going to be there like Super Chase Rare.
Yes.
And unless you want to throw away your money, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, it was in the last time, which was a shame.
Which kind of... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I was going to say it's a shame.
Yeah. And that kind of brings me back to sort of Marvel Crisis Protocols in a way, because there's no blind buying. The models might be more expensive than people are hoping for. But if you're used to something like X-Wing, which is another game I've played and still do, you don't just get the model in the box, you get the rules and cards and abilities and other bits and bobs, which, yes, they sometimes go out of, what's the word?
Print.
Not necessarily out of print, out of use because of the rules changes or something like that.
Oh, yeah. I get
you can always, they sometimes get errated out, and you can download the update off their website.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And obviously, we've actually worked together doing some demonstration work for Marvel Protocol, Crisis Protocol, that is.
We have.
Yeah, at last year's virtual Games Expo.
It was a very unique experience.
It was fun. But didn't get as many people as we'd like, but I think there were particular reasons for that. But
yeah, there were quite a few watchers. Not necessarily people wanted to take part, but there was quite a few that were interested in just seeing some of the pictures we had.
Yeah, I mean, I had quite a bit of... I think I spent most of my Sunday actually literally just chatting about the game and the models, so it worked just as well, I guess. If someone's asking questions, it's just as good. So I think we'll move on and talk about the game. So at its core, how would you describe Marvel Crisis Protocol?
Right. You move miniatures and you roll dice. That's the very core of it.
Yeah.
But it simulates battles from comics or film, depending on your preference, or fights that you've always dreamed of being able to see, but they haven't written them yet.
Yeah.
And they have written a lot of comics.
They have. I was going through Marvel digital service, and I can't remember the name of it. Is it Unlimited? Something like that. The other day, and I was I
think there's a few.
Yeah, I was like, crikey, there's so much I haven't read here.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think I'm fairly well read with Marvel, so.
I think the same, and I know I'm not.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's a miniatures game. So is it a skirmish or a mass battle? Or?
Yes, absolutely. It's primarily aimed as a skirmish game. I don't think they're encouraging mass battle play at the moment. There's nothing to stop you from homebrewing it. You can get together with your friends and just do what you want, really. When it comes to competitive play, it will be just a skirmish game.
Yeah, cool. And so it's individual models as opposed to units of models.
Yes. Although you could quite easily imagine that with characters like Hydra Bob, that we might actually get basic troops or basic characters from the show, like Shield agents or Hydra soldiers, at a later date.
That would be cool.
That might be perhaps a different version. So we could have the two sort of playing side by side. You just have the superhero fight, or you can have a slightly larger skirmish.
Yeah, because it tends to be. I don't know if you've ever played the Batman game, but you can have ordinary people in there and then superheroes, and it gets very,
Yes, it does. I'm going to mention the other side.
Yeah.
But yeah, night models. They do a DC one. That they used to have the license for Marvel. When that disappeared, that gave me the inkling that somebody else was going to do something. Which within a year or so, suddenly there was Marvel Crisis Protocols, and it was staffed by half the team from Privateer Press.
Yeah, because I remember that
all the big names that had done a successful job over there suddenly jumped ship, formed this new super team, and it's like one of those bands where they go, oh, we're taking the lead singer from Take That, and we're taking the guitarist from Guns N' Roses, and we're gonna have a super musical experience, and they've kind of done that with Atomic Mass.
Yeah, I remember was it Gen Con or when they announced the game?
Yeah.
And it was sort of like it just come out, and it was sort of the Fantasy Flight, not Final Fantasy. I always do that. I always say Final Fantasy when I mean Fantasy Flight. And I remember sort of everyone was like, it sort of like was tacked on at the end of the seminar.
It was. It was quite surprising.
Yeah, and everyone was like, well, who's this outfit?
So we had this slight inkling with Legend of the Five Rings. Asmodee had acquired it as a card game. They'd been doing quite well, and then Privateer Press suddenly had a deal to produce miniatures for them. Now, this kind of gave me a feeling that, are Asmodee going to buy Privateer Press?
Yeah.
Is there something going on? Now, nothing really ever came of it, but after that had happened, suddenly we had Atomic Mass. So one can only speculate from there that perhaps something might have been on the way to happening, and they changed their minds, and the people that still wanted to do something went to Asmodee.
Yeah.
But I'm not qualified to talk on the matter in that regard, so I'm just picking it out of the air, really, as a reason why the miniature deal happened, and then suddenly Atomic Mass happened.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. That's interesting. I knew that there had been some talk of Legend of the Five Rings miniatures, but I didn't realise it was sort of like with Privateer Press.
I've got some of them.
Oh, have you? Awesome.
Very nice models.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Legend of the Five Rings fan, but I did like the models, and I did like the artwork.
Yeah, I loved the RPG myself. It was my kind of.
It's very interesting, but I just haven't got time.
Yeah. So what kind of scale is Crisis Protocol at?
Ooh. Top of my head, I believe it's something in the 30s.
Yeah.
Something like 30. I want to say 33 mil, but that's I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, fair enough.
It's definitely a little bit bigger than GW, but with GW always growing the size of the miniatures, I'm sure
never know. Yeah, no problem. And as you say you can play in the comics or in the movies. So is it set within its own multiverse, or is it based on the movies or comics in particular?
Well, I believe primarily it's stylized over the comics. There are some embellishments, if you will, on them looking slightly movie-ish. I'm not too sure what their licensing deal is exactly. They may have been asked this question and they may have answered it already, but I wasn't paying attention, unfortunately.
Well, I suppose when because I do book reviews for Aconite, and they sort of like, we're not in the main comic or movie universe. We sort of had to create our own. Yeah. In order to so we don't do something with our stuff that is out of whack with everything else.
Yeah, they don't want to upset anyone, and I feel that by just stylizing it rather than pinning anything down, it allows the player to do their own thing.
Yeah, because I mean, let's be perfectly honest, Dr. Octopus looks pretty much Dr. Octopus in most multiverses. So
yes, he does. Although sometimes Dr. Octopus isn't in Dr. Octopus's body. He's in Peter Parker's.
Yeah,
and that's a different story.
Okay, awesome. Right, so, I mean, the game itself, how would you say, what is the way of getting started in this? So what kind of starter set are we talking about here?
Well, we have a starter set, and it's got a truckload of models, and it's great value compared to buying them individually.
Yeah, I've got it sat right here next to me, so it is.
I don't actually have the starter set.
Ah.
I've just been, because I'm a fussy person when I come to collect my models. I got hold of the rules, and then I just went and got the models that I liked.
Ah, right.
And I'm more of the subclass of superhero in terms of comic book sales. I like all the ones that nobody really likes, the ones that kind of get cancelled.
Yeah.
So Venom's popular, but he started off as a sort of a B-list comic book character. So I've got Venom, and out of the Spider-Man characters, I want Scarlet Spider, and I'm debating whether to convert him or wait for them to produce him, because it feels like they might.
I reckon they will do. Spider-Man are always very popular.
He is.
Yeah.
And they've just done a second Spider-Man. They've just done a second. Well, not just, but they've got two Black Widows, which I found slightly surprising, because although she's quite a prominent character in the films, she's not necessarily always at the forefront in the comics.
No, she isn't really. I mean, I must admit, I'm a big fan of the Hot Shots, so I was kind of very tempted with getting the second Black Widow myself. So again,
she came with Hawkeye, didn't she? In the second, when she came out.
I believe that's correct. But we've got so I mean, in the starter set itself, I'm just gonna have to dropped it on the floor now. So you've got Captain America.
You have indeed Iron Man,
Spider-Man, Black Widow,
indeed,
as we said. And I'm just trying to find the box here because I can't reach it. Who else have you got? Captain Marvel.
You do. We've got Red Skull.
Yep.
And Ultron.
Dr. Octopus. Baron Zemo.
That's right. And
Crossbones.
Indeed, I was just about to say that one.
Yeah, so nice little collection of characters there.
Yeah, it's prominent characters, but also some that have perhaps had a little bit more MCU screen time. So Crossbones is quite recent. Zemo, I'd say he's equal. He's becoming more of a thing with Winter Soldier show. That if anybody's watching that,
yeah,
I am. And I like Zemo dancing.
Oh yes, it's hilarious.
Lots of sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems to me like there's an almost someone versus someone else. So obviously
Cap would have excuse me. Cap would have fought Zemo or Red Skull at some point. Iron Man's got a history with Ultron. Cap's got a history with Black Widow, and everyone really. So that there's this narrative explanation for them all to have been in there at some point or another.
Yeah, exactly. And it is from what I have done with it, it's a very, very narrative driven game.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, as opposed to just being a what do you call it? Just put some models on the table and smash them together. Yeah,
because with some games you do get the whole, we're going to put our models down, we're going to just go, I'm going to move all my models and you're going to sit there for half an hour while I do everything I'm going to do. This game's a little bit more involved. There's a lot more keeping each other attentive while you play, and I like that. They do it with X-Wing as well.
Yeah,
you need to react. You need to be paying attention. Whereas some of the bigger army games, perhaps Warhammer, you're waiting. I don't mind that.
No,
there's a time and a place for it, but you sometimes want that speed of critical thinking, a little bit like chess in a way, because you have to watch what the other person's doing. You have to think several moves ahead. And yes, you can do that to Warhammer or War Machine or any of the bigger battles. But ultimately, there is the urge while you're sat there. You might want to have a drink, have some food. You start chatting to somebody else in the games club or something like that, and you don't quite pay attention. Although, there are lots of people that do pay attention. So,
True.
I should not speak for everybody.
Yeah. And what kind of factions, as it were, what kind of characters can you use to form your team? Because there's a sort of faction sort of level going on there.
Yes, there is indeed. We've got Asgard, we've got Avengers, we've got Black Order, we've got the Cabal, Defenders, Guardians of the Galaxy, Wakanda, Web Warriors, and Spider Foes. Many of the characters cross over between different factions. Asgard at the moment is fairly small. We've got Thor, Hela, Loki, Valkyrie, and Angela.
Yeah.
Angela being a character that used to be a character in Spawn, but due to a little legal dispute between the creator and the owner of Image, he took him away. Took her away, took the character away, and sold it to Marvel, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then she was rewritten as a character in Thor's mythos as lost sister, and there she is.
Awesome. Cool. So, and obviously, as you said, some can cross between factions as well.
They can.
Yeah, because I think just thinking Dr. Octopus keeps staying on him. He starts with a Cabal, and then obviously he's a Spider Foe as well.
He is.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Now, how would
I
you
haven't
say?
noticed, though. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say I haven't noticed whether they're thinking of crossing anyone off a list. That would be something interesting to see if they would remove them. But I'm hoping that they don't do something like that.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? But as you say, it is an errated game. It is something that they do keep an eye on in terms of balance. Yeah, so
and that might be something they could do later on to rebalance something. Say a team has too many powerful characters for the meta, because it's not necessarily going to stop people doing what they want at home, but for competitive play, they might narratively say, in our universe, this has happened, so they're no longer, or temporarily, they're not in that team.
Okay, and do you have to stick to the same faction to select your team from?
Absolutely don't.
Yep.
And to get the team affiliation, you don't even have to have a full team of that faction. I can't remember the percentage, but you might want to add that in.
Yeah, so it's a percentage of the team that has to. If the percentage of a team belongs to one faction, it gets the faction rules.
Yeah.
So you could decide, you've got your spider gang there, and then you decided, hey, actually, Daredevil's going to come along and help us out here.
Yeah. But speaking of Daredevil, I get a feeling that he might have affiliation with Web Warriors at some point, because
wouldn't surprise me.
He's good friends with old Peter Parker.
He is. So, in terms of gameplay, how would this differ from a game like Warhammer 40k or sorry, I'm just thinking there of a game or War Machine that many people are probably used to. So, what makes this different in terms of gameplay from those?
Well, to be honest, when it boils down to it, there's a lot of similarity between all miniatures games in terms of you're rolling dice, you're reacting to attributes, and just moving based on the stats and results there. But one of the things that stands out for me with Marvel Crisis Protocols is the interaction with the scenery. It's very cinematic in the sense that each piece of scenery is given a level, and that will be how and who can impact or interact with it. Yeah, and that creates something that's more I say visceral and engaging, and because you're going to be picking up the car and smashing it over the Hulk, or the Hulk's going to smash it on you, depending on who you're using and how you're using it. There are two sides to the card for the characters that you're playing with. So depending on how much damage they've taken, you might flip the card over and have different effects.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that's for me, it's a slight nod to HeroClix in the sense that with the dial, you used to take damage and you turn it, and Hulk would always get stronger because you're hurting him and he's getting angry and he's boom. Other characters would just lose powers and things like that. But yeah, going back to Marvel Crisis Protocols, they've just got the two sides of a card, and you can play it based on that.
Yeah. And when you said the interaction to terrain, you sort of touched on it a little there, but you can actually destroy the terrain, of course, can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they say you can pick up a taxi and fling it at other characters.
And then throw them through, well, not necessarily throw them through the building, but you can damage the building, and that can affect anyone that might be in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant. So we know there are some upcoming models, which I think everyone is very excited about. So what of those upcoming models are you really looking forward to?
The most recent thing I've watched was the guys painting Iron Fist and Luke Cage.
Ooh, Heroes for Hire.
That's absolutely right. I'm a big fan of those two.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Fist was a little bit wavy in terms of the Netflix show, but comics-wise, I'm definitely a big Heroes for Hire fan, and I'm looking forward to experience playing with them. In fact, I'm just looking forward to playing in general at the moment.
Yeah. I must admit, I was sort of like so mad they got individual season 2s, and I was like, you should have just done a Heroes for Hire season.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
Who else is there? There's the most recently they also showed off Carnage. That was something I was really looking forward to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Spider-Man villains. So Mysterio, he's had a nod recently.
Yeah.
That's looking good.
Spider-Gwen and...
Are they doing a second Spider-Gwen?
Are they doing it? Oh, no, they've already released her, haven't they? Of course they have. Yeah. I've just sort of got myself thinking, are they releasing... is Spider-Gwen coming? No, she's already out.
She is.
Yeah.
But there's kind of infinite possibilities. There's infinite possibilities with all of them, but especially the Spider-Web Warriors. Mm-hmm. So many different multiverse characters at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the cool thing at the moment as well, because everyone likes the multiverse. It's a way for them to sort of exploit the very essence of what people enjoy from a show, the main character. Mm-hmm. And look, he's wearing pajamas. He's a different Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But I'm a sucker for it. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, me too. I know Spider-Ham, when they eventually do him, will be ridiculous, but I want it.
Yes. Who else? Somebody else I was interested in. Oh, Blade.
Oh, Blade.
They showed him recently. I think he was just a CG render, but you have him descending on what looks like some vampires and stuff. Because that's another thing. The action poses. They try their hardest to do something cinematic with each miniature.
Yeah.
Some people might just want their models to be stuck to the base, and I understand that. But I like to also have my models on the shelf, and I like to look at them.
Yeah, because they're very display quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are things that people can do with third party to perhaps secure some models to the base a bit more. Like I know people have problems with Storm. And there's third party companies that will do different like whirlwind or weather effects that you can stick on the base, and you kind of remove Storm from the base where she normally connects, and you stick her into the whirlwind, and it kind of creates a much more stable base.
Yeah.
But you still get a cool effect at the same time. Awesome.
So it's big enough that third parties are getting interested in it there.
Absolutely, sir. And some of it's things that you would print with a 3D printer, or find a friend that has a 3D printer, or just find someone with a 3D printer and become their friend. That is another option.
Nice.
Because people print extra lining for Thor. That's always good. Some people take that to quite an extreme, rather. And the other thing that's sort of a comedy thing going on at the moment with the models is She-Hulk. Now, she's a cracking model, and she's got this big iron bar above her shoulders that she's sort of ready to smack someone with.
Yeah.
Now, everyone seems to be obsessed with trying to find a bigger and bigger thing to replace that iron bar with, and have She-Hulk hold it as if she's about to throw it. Someone was trying to make her hold the entire starter box of Marvel Crisis Protocols. I think they succeeded. I don't have photographic evidence at this point, but it was talked about on the Facebook group. The nicest one I've seen is they've taken a car, the standard car piece that you can use as throwing scenery, and they've managed to cut in and insert the iron bar so it looks like she's just bench pressing, if you will, the car, and about to sort of just throw that.
Nice.
So that's a really good conversion.
Fantastic. Okay, so I mean, what is your favourite models that they've released so far, be it gameplay wise or sculpting?
Ooh, got me there. Because we're not. That's one of the main problems with this game is it kind of emerged just as we've gone into all this lockdown shenanigans. So no one has really been able to extensively play it. Or they might have a loved one that they'll play to death with, and some people have got different protocols with regards to COVID than perhaps other countries do. So all those folk in New Zealand that are Marvel Crisis Protocol fans will probably be the best players at the moment. So who would I say? Sculpt wise, I'm quite fond of the Spider-Man characters because they're all jumping around like idiots. I've got a big love for MODOK. Now, MODOK is an idiot in the comics. He's a completely silly character, massive head, tiny arms.
Yeah.
You wouldn't give him the slightest thought of him being a good character. But somehow, the way that they've interpreted him into the game, beast. He can do everything you need him to do. He's definitely a big pick for a lot of builds for this, and he's also a cracking model who looks like he's farting. He's just got this big rocket launcher coming out of his behind, and that makes me happy.
Fantastic. All right, awesome. So where would you suggest, if someone's interested in getting more information about Crisis Protocol, where would you suggest they go take a look?
Well, we've got Atomic Mass Games as a website. They have a presence on all social media. There are a few YouTubers and Twitch streamers. Painting wise, for the models, I would go to Cutthroat Cure. He, parental warning, it's a bit more of adult humor on that channel, so you might not want to go there. And there's the general Facebook group is probably the main hub to go to. You would go get in there, hopefully you've got Facebook, and join the Facebook group, and there's lots of discussion on converting upcoming models, strategies, everything in there. And it's a really good group, well managed, no shenanigans going on in there, and they always have links going to everything that's recommended, really.
Fantastic. All right, awesome. Well, thank you for your time, Andrew. It's been lovely chatting to you, and hopefully we'll have you on again sometime to talk about this or something else.
It was a pleasure, never a chore, sir.
now me and Michael are going to be talking about contrast paints. We were going to be talking with Mum and Egan about contrast paints, but we did a whole interview with her about it, and it was great. And then Michael went to edit it and found that it was something had gone wrong with recording it, and there was nothing usable.
Yeah, we even contracted it out to a sound engineer to try and salvage, and it was unsalvageable.
Yes.
So, 5 years of podcasting, my first bad file.
Yeah, so apologies to Mum and Egan for that. It's
It's
very unfortunate. We'll get your opinions and try and put them on
the blog.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay. So, right. Shall we talk about contrast paints
so
then?
contrast paints.
Yeah.
So they came out how long ago?
Summer 2019, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Feels
So
like it. It's
how
not
did
really, is it?
it feels like an age. It feels like 2020 went on forever.
It does. It does.
So at first, how did you find them then?
Well, my first tryout of them was actually at the Warhammer Fest where they were unveiled, and it took absolutely ages to get a try of them, because the area where they were showing them off and you could give a try was just constantly ram-packed full of people. I did the seminars on this is how it works, this is science behind it and stuff, and that was cool, but actually getting my hands onto it was very difficult. What I had to do was I had to skip going to the Golden Demon ceremony.
Shock horror.
Well, it's usually the best time to actually speak to people. If you're going on the Sunday, it's the best time to speak to anybody to get individual time and a little bit more time when they're more focused. So, for example, Holly Goodwin was there a few years ago. I had a good half-hour chat with her during the Golden Demon ceremony about the symbols on Death Guard, which I wasn't even playing Death Guard at the time, but it was just sort of like a very interesting conversation we had.
Yeah.
It was quite cool. And dice, which was interesting. And yeah, so my first model I painted was a Nurgle, but no, a Death Guard of Nurgle, because that's all the models I had, Death Guard or a Primaris Intercessor. So yeah, so I painted a Death Guard. There was a lot of playing around, doing a bit of blending on it, and it was interesting. Just played Bara Green, few fleshy colours, bit of pink. Yeah. What about you?
We were at the UK Games Expo.
Yes, we were. UK Games Expo shortly
one of
afterwards.
the first places we went to was to try them out, because I was excited to try them. They were sold big. It was this big contrast paints, one thick coat, and that's so I went to try them, and it was a weird experience using them, because they're very unlike anything that I was using before, because I missed using anything like inks or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've never used anything like that before, so it was a new experience for me. I found them to be quite good. I was painting just a Space Marine. I was using the appropriate Blood Angels colours, being that's why I usually paint. And I found them reasonable, although on flat surfaces they didn't pique my interest. But on all the detail, they just seemed to work so well. Yeah.
I think you put down in the notes here, white is witchcraft.
Yes, we came away thinking white was heresy.
Yeah, the Apothecary White is really, really, really good.
Yeah, you tried it then, didn't you?
Yeah, I tried it then.
You tried it then.
Really good, really good. That just subtle texture to it. I don't know if you can hear that noise outside. We're recording with the patio door open, and there's some kids playing in their garden, so I don't know if it's picking that up. Okay, so a couple of years on, I used contrast a lot.
Yeah.
A lot, but
you paint a lot.
I paint a lot, but I don't tend to use it for the purpose it's intended for. I don't do that one thick coat. I like them because they're a nice, heavily pigmented, what I think is a gel glaze, and I think they're great for anything textured.
Yeah, they work fantastic with texture and detail and stuff. Flat surfaces, they you can take and leave them on flat surfaces. They're a good pigment, but they don't like light up my world on flat things.
No.
Like painting a Space Marine with them, it's pretty standard. They're just
I mean, I have seen
but
an excellent video from Duncan Rhodes. He did a using contrast video, which we'll put up in the show notes. It's quite a good video, actually. And what he did with that was, to paint an Ultramarine, was he literally took the grey sear, sprayed the Ultramarine, did the Ultramarines blue, which, to be honest, is not my favourite colour. I don't like it that much.
Yeah.
I don't even have it in the collection. Even though I love Ultramarines in 30k, I don't like that colour.
we don't have it.
I don't have it. And what he's done is he's painted the Space Marine Ultramarines blue, and then what he's done is he's glazed over Macragge blue to give it that sort of thing. So it's sort of like essentially doing the wash first and then tidying up. It's an interesting technique. But again, we'll put a post up and put the video in the show notes. It looks quite good, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, what's your favourite paint?
My
so far?
favourite, I really enjoy painting any like fur type detail or leather type detail. So like Gorgon fur is a good one.
Yeah, snakebite leather. I like the browns. Cygor brown, wildwood.
Yes.
Speaking of that, I was using a bunch of wildwood last night to do some doors for Kill Team Arena.
Oh, wood's brilliant.
Well, wildwood, it was just using
gets in the grain and...
Yeah, I just watered it down with a contrast medium to get a nice oily, grimy finish.
Ooh.
And it works quite well. And I've got that secret heresy project with a lot of contrast in there. But it's finding new uses for them. Like, for example, washing metals. Basilicanium grey is certainly a favourite above and beyond Null Oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives a different finish.
Definitely. But it's the browns are, for me, the standout favourite. Mind you, I don't like the yellow either.
I think it's because it's so bright.
Yeah.
They are all very bright.
Yeah, the yellows are quite nice. Now's Dreg Yellow, as I said, over metal makes a nice dull gold, perfect gold. Love that colour over metal. So I mean, what's your least favourite colours?
My least favourite, being an orc player, the orc flesh at first I really liked, but having tried to use it on orcs and seen it, and actually looked back at what I've done with them, I use it on some Iron Jaws. It's very, very bright.
I think
almost like the going back to the old style of painting orcs in very bright primary style colours, and it just doesn't fit with a lot of the grimdark.
Then again, our orc scheme isn't exactly standard, is it?
No, it is very grimy, our scheme. Very
multicoloured.
Multicoloured orcs.
Yeah, it's not tends to be that green.
Yeah.
My personal least favourite one, I'd have to say, Ultramarines blue. It's Ultramarines blue. I just hate that colour. I just really dislike it. It just doesn't look Ultramarine-y to me. My other concern is, I suppose they do tend to go towards more the bubblegum side of things. I think we spoke about that last time. They can tend to go towards the brighter end.
Yeah.
But it depends. Sometimes that works, like I did to my Raptorex.
Yes, your Raptorex are very good. I was looking back at things that I've done with them, and I painted the stuff from Stuffed Fables, the board game. And it really works for them. They're stuffed toys. They look great painted with bubblegummy colours. But sometimes you don't want that, so...
But they're not all bubblegummy, because when you've done your Stuffed Fables miniatures, you've done those doll head creepy crawly things.
The crawlies, yes, with the porcelain faces.
Yeah, because you just sort of watered down the Gullum flesh.
Yes. Oh, that worked really well.
Oh, they're creepy looking.
Yeah, my mum can't look at them when she plays. She just goes, no, they're too creepy.
Oh. But yeah, skin. I love them for skin. I mean, I like it for skin. I mean, I was speaking to the heavy metal guys at Warhammer Fest, and I've spoken to a few I've run recently, and they tell me they use them in their work on their box art models. They're telling me, yes, we use contrast, and it's like, some part of me is sort of like, really? But another part of me is these are professional painters. If they can see a tool they can use, they're going to use it.
Yeah. Skin's good. Like we said, wood bark is good.
Oh yeah. Doing the Warcry buildings.
Yeah.
My Warcry building wood is literally just Gracia, Wildwood, Baneblade Brown.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think that's the thing. They always need something else to make them
I'd
pop.
always give them a highlight and a dry brush.
Yeah.
Or a dry brush at least.
I mean, it's supposed to be the base coat, the wash, and the highlight in one, but it never quite looks finished.
Yeah.
With just the contrast.
And I found them good for weathering as well, like Cygor Brown. It's great for weathering. I did my Aeronautica planes weathered using that, and you did your Aeronautica.
I did the Aeronautica, yeah.
You did most of your Orc planes.
They looked really good. It really seeped into all of the details on them, and the Aeronautica stuff, with it being so small and so detailed, it really made them look fantastic.
Yeah. So what about the other uses? Because I think I've touched upon it before, but putting contrast over metallics can give a very nice effect.
Yeah, I did that on my Gorkanaut. Last thing I painted, just to give some variety to the panels I was painting, because it's got a patchwork of different colours of panels, and it just gives this nice coloured metallic. And doing it over doing a colour over, say, Lead Belcher gives a nice coloured metallic sheen. Looks really good. Or if you want like a black shining metallic, that can be really fantastic as well.
That's what I fancy doing for my Deathwatch. I fancy doing them with a black metallic. And obviously, as it goes, and we were talking about this before, they are a tool.
Yeah.
You know, they're another tool in the work in the thing. I mean, you did the Red Gobbo, didn't you? Just before Christmas, and that used quite a bit of contrast.
Yeah, I used it in different ways, but a lot of other techniques in between.
Yeah.
They're one of many techniques to use to improve your painting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not go out there and paint everything in contrast. I mean, you can. I did the Stuffed Fables miniatures mostly in contrast, but they look very rough and ready.
Yeah, but I think that's the intention with those.
I left them like that. I wanted them like that, but for other models, you probably you might want them like that. You might want to paint like that, but most people don't. They want more detail. They want more fine, refined models.
Yeah. So, would you recommend them to a new painter in the way that Games Workshop recommended to them? One thick coat and you're done.
No.
No, I don't think you would.
It's too easy to get stuck in the this is easy to paint, I will continue to do this and I won't challenge myself at all way. It's an easy way to pick up a brush and put colour on and paint. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't interested in painting and you just want to get the models on the table, it's fair enough. But if you're a new painter, then you should maybe try more traditional ways of layering, using dry brushing. It's a really easy way of adding layers onto things if you're not good at like edge highlighting and stuff.
Yeah. So you would consider these something that a new painter could use, but in combination with other techniques.
Yeah, use other techniques as well, or first and then get them. You know, don't go into it thinking, oh, I'll use contrast and that's all I'll use to paint these models, because you'll just get stuck using contrast.
Okay, what about to an experienced painter? Would you recommend them?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. It sounds bad, but why ignore a potential tool?
Yeah, they offer a great pigmented paint, great colour range, and on detail stuff, on fur, on wood, on anything with a lot a lot of detail that it can seep into, a lot of texture. It just gives a really nice look that you can then add on top of.
Yeah, they're great, as you say, highly pigmented glazes. Fantastic. The chemist side of me really would like to get them under a spectrometer to have a look at what's actually in them, because I'm convinced they're a gel paint.
Well, you can't mix them with water, so...
I mean, you can, but it's not very nice. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I've accidentally had a wet brush and used them with a wet brush, and it goes kind of blobby and smeary and almost dropletty, so that being sort of gel based might make sense for that.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So I think that's about all we want to do for that. As I said, apologies to Mum and Negan.
Yes.
We will, as I said, we want to get your thoughts on that, because they were very interesting thoughts and they're very good, and we definitely want to get those down, so maybe get them on the blog at some point. But in the meantime, I guess that's pretty much us for the show.
Yeah.
Next month we're coming back with definitely, we've got Rob from Edge of Empire on.
Awesome.
And we're going to talk about lighting.
You
know, because
we've got the
Daylight Company
sponsorship,
which we probably need to record an advert or something for. Really.
Yes.
To shop in the show. Anyway, thanks for joining us today. Sorry this episode has gotten out a little late, but technical difficulties.
Yep. Having to re-record a whole section.
Yep, and we'll be back next month. As I said, sorry, next fortnight.
2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks with. We've got, as I said, at the moment, I think I've got down Adeptus Titanicus, lighting. I've got to figure something else out.
We'll sort something out.
All right. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks. Bye.